Welcome back to Practical Product Management. This podcast is all about how theory is nice in product management, but product management happens in context and it has to be practical. So today, Marilyn and I are really excited to talk to Jay, who has 25 years of experience in product leadership, has worked at some really well-known companies like Microsoft and Expedia and Axon, and now is Chief Product Advisor. It's the best title. So, Jay, tell us about yourself, and what do you want to talk about?
All right. Well, thanks for having me, ladies. Just a little bit of my journey. I was at college and was part of a startup there. Kind of backed my way into it. Really smart sophomore, had a great idea. And my whole goal in college, dating myself, was I really wanted to work at Microsoft. Microsoft was the dream company at the time.
Nice.
And I really wanted to be there. I tried interviewing, got, a few rounds deep, didn't get to the end, and had already, signed an offer for another company. And I just kind of had this opportunity to work in this startup in the college town just for the summer before I was going to move on to another company. And that was an amazing experience. And one thing led to the other. My offer kind of fell through a little bit at the company I was going to go to, but I was ready to tell them that I was going to back out anyway. And that company ended up getting acquired by Microsoft. We had the right product at the right time during the internet bubble phase. And one thing led to another. And, they bought us, and they wanted to make us part of the Hotmail group that they had bought the year before. And so they moved us to the Silicon Valley office, and I was like dying to get to the headquarters, but I was fine. I was at Microsoft. It was a great thing. So I did that. I ended up, I was into entrepreneurship in college. I knew I wanted to do something small business related. But I also had this love for this huge company I hadn't worked at because it seemed like this very, very small, fun thing. And one thing led to another, and I was at Microsoft for 15 years after getting acquired. And everyone would laugh at me, including the CEO of the company that he sold to Microsoft. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I just said, I found a way to be an entrepreneur at this company. Like, they keep tapping me for, day zero type projects. Every team I've been on has had a family feel to it. And at the time I was just like, man, I keep lucking out and keep picking these teams. And then I realized, no, I think I'm a part of that, like a small part, but I think I'm attracted to the same folks who like to make it feel like a family and make it more than work. So I did 2 stints at Microsoft. Halfway through, I left and moved to the East Coast. I was based in Seattle, went for personal reasons and decided I joined another startup. That one didn't do well during the 2008 recession. We had a good idea, but ran out of money. Yeah. And then I went back to what I knew was I did another 7 years at Microsoft to total 15. And then I didn't think I was ever going to leave. My friends didn't think I was ever going to leave. They're like, get out there, like, use your skills elsewhere. And I went to Expedia next as a VP of product management and design. But that was another, like, backed my way into it. I was hanging out with a friend, and she was telling me about roles she was looking into. And she kept talking about, like, she had Expedia, Facebook, all these roles. And she kept talking about this Expedia role. It was inside of the customer service world, inside of Expedia. They had a very large product and dev organization, which was not my experience at other companies like Microsoft. Like, they didn't really fund the support group at Microsoft with actual product and engineering talent. And she kept talking about it, but she kept talking about it as like, this is this very mundane job. Like, I like the person, I like the people, I like the leader, but the content's not super interesting. And I kept saying over drinks, I'm like, I think that's the one you should take. I think that one's got the most growth and the most transformation opportunity. One thing led to another. I did 5 years there. And then I ended up moving on to a company called Axon that makes software and hardware, like body cameras and tasers and evidence management software for law enforcement. I did that for 2 years, and then now I'm doing my own thing. I'm trying to work with as many companies as possible.
So I think we all were at Expedia at the same time then.
Yes.
Is that true? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. I sat back to back with Marilyn, so I know she was there.
You knew exactly where I
I
sat,
knew exactly where you were all the time.
except for when I was putting glitter on your desk, and then you didn't know where I was.
That's true. Good
Um,
point. Good point.
Jay, you've had such a cool career, from actual building products, through to building teams and then leading large divisions, and now you're advising CEOs and
Mhm.
founders and startups on what it means to sort of bring in and build a product practice, and taking on a lot of those responsibilities for them or helping them with those responsibilities. What do you think that people misunderstand the most about bringing product into a company or a space where product hasn't been or hasn't been very strong?
That's a great question. I think the two things are one, product that are not product folks are not just, and under product I lump design, product management, all
Mm,
creatives. I
mm,
think of it as lowercase product, lowercase p. Um, the misconception for folks that don't have product backgrounds that are hiring you is that you're the Rosetta Stone that knows how to talk to developers. Like your job in life is to be put in the same area of the building as developers, and you know how to talk to them, you know how to make things happen, but that you are a counterpart to engineering only, and that
mm,
there are certain class of problems and opportunities and strategy that clearly map to you, but that's your lane, and that where I've seen the best work happen is when, one, you think of product more as an ethos. And I know this is a very practical podcast, but like product as a philosophy, and that it's, no one, the product leader doesn't own product for the organization. They just help steer it. They help bring the collaboration together. They bring the processes and just the thought process to product. But there are so many different types of problems that a product organization can help with that at first blush don't don't feel like a product problem to the untrained eye or the person who hasn't been in there. So I was in an organization, Expedia, which was about managing customer service agents around the world, 20,000 plus when I was there. And there were many problems when I sat on the SLT, with the guy who managed those agents around the world and procuring them and training them and working with outsourced companies, and I was kind of expected to be quiet during those conversations during the SLT. And these were all people that would love to take me out for a beer. We all got along really well, but when it came to, you walk into that SLT and you put on your hat, like they thought I only owned a product hat, and they thought that was only like, okay, when we come to you to see how are we doing with the website or the new app, that was my role. And
right.
the reason my SVP brought me in, and he said, I was looking for someone with, I didn't want someone who was a classic telephony call center person. I got tons of those resumes. I needed someone who thought differently, started with the customer first,
Yeah.
and didn't have a particular solution in mind. And I love watching you in those meetings because you're hearing stuff for the first time that we've been talking about for years. And you're like, have you tried this? Have we thought about this? And doing it in a way where you're not disrespectful, like know it all, like, oh, duh, like, why don't you do this? And your colleagues aren't realizing that, you bring more to the table. And it's not just you, the product discipline brings more to the table. We could pull a couple people in your organization right now, move them over to that area, and they would bring a fresh perspective and solutions. It's like why you go to a company like IDEO to help you design things. Like they're not just, in a particular lane. They'll help you redesign the how you walk through the grocery store, and then they'll also redesign the gadgets that are on the shelves. Like they're the breadth of what they can do. And I think that's the biggest misconception, is that product is something that you have to put in one lane, and it's not where we, as product folks, we love to swim upstream and we want to hear it all raw. Just give me all the problems. And maybe the only thing I build for you is the most simple web page from 20 years ago, because that's all you need. I don't need to bring you AI necessarily, but I need to hear the problem.
Yeah.
And, that I think has been the biggest, and that was the biggest growth opportunity at Expedia, both for me, growth, and then helping that organization. They were probably one of the last organizations at Expedia that wasn't product first mentality. And so it's, was one of the hardest, but my favorite part of my career was that opportunity.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm smiling at Leah because I feel like we have also experienced places where product was not expected to have any strategic influence.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think what you said really resonates with me, because I think there are so many times you bring in this person who has this ability to think in this way and see all of the different pieces and parts, and you say, like, go sit in that chair and only sit in that chair and don't move out of your chair.
Yep.
Right. Meanwhile, I'm like, what's the problem in finance? What's
Mm-hmm.
happening in the finance
Yeah,
team?
right.
Could I ask a question about HR? Right. You're just like in there sort of picking at things. And when you start to say, like, what if we applied this mindset to that? You can get these sort of grumpy faces, but sometimes they're like, okay, what, say more. Right. And I
Yep.
think that's like, for me, I was at a startup where they were like, we're going to hire on my first day, I had started as CPO, and they said, we're going to hire a chief customer officer. And I was like, no, you're not. You're not going to hire a chief customer officer, because that's my job. Don't hire that role until you know what you have in me, and we can define what it is. Like, if we decide later to hire one, great. But let me in here before we go hire some other person whose job doesn't make sense to me. Right.
And
And
how
the
do you
same thing.
do that? Oh, I'm sorry. No.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
How do you do that without, because I lived this there at Expedia, like, how do you do that without coming off as full of yourself, as, we used to say at Microsoft, like a cookie licker, someone who goes and licks all cookies, that say, like, this is my empire, when you're just like, no, like, just give us a crack at it, and that might save you a hire. It's not that I want a title that's CPO/CCO/ like,
No,
I'm just
exactly.
telling you, like, let's figure out what we need first.
Yes.
And the challenge with Expedia was I walked into a fully baked org that worked a certain way for 20 years. So those roles were already filled, and some of those were they weren't odd at the time. Like, if I was there as the leader back in the day when that organization was designed, there was needs for how these folks were laid out, and they were all smart people. And I used to say to my boss, I'm like, I think you should take all of our titles, put them back in a hat, and then shake them up and redistribute them and change them. It's not like I don't think I can work with that person.
Right.
It's just like, this is an archaic way to think about things.
Right.
And like, everyone, I went through the interview loop. It was great. That's why I was like, I love these people. I can't wait to work with them. The boss tells me the day he announced that I accepted the offer, he's like, everyone just like applauded. They were all great. And then I got there, and it was like, within a month, I was just like, maybe I should leave. I feel like a fish out of water. Like, I have caused disruption just by showing up.
Yep.
People who think I have a great personality are like, we had our first offsite, and we had to do a secret survey of each organization. Like, how well does product work with finance? How well does product work with this org that was created to work with the Expedia.com brand? And I got voted like least likely to collaborate. And I all of my numbers were like in the toilet. And I was just like, I don't know if you know Shawshank Redemption, but it's like my favorite movie of all time. And there's a great line in there where they're like, what did you do? Why are you in here? And he's like, I had to come to Shawshank to be a criminal. Like, I wasn't a criminal. That's why I felt at Expedia. I was like, I had to come to Expedia to be a non-collaborator. Like, the things that were at the top of my reviews at Microsoft: collaboration, great to work with, doesn't bring his idea and say my way or the highway. I was getting the exact opposite feedback. And I just said, dude, I'll go. It's easier if I leave and go back to Microsoft or somewhere else than to change the mindset here. He's just like, I'll lose half that SLT if I need to. You're not going anywhere. So
that must have been so hard for you. That must have been so hard for you. That never happened to anyone else in that situation.
I like both Lee and I are laughing because like literally have had the same experience. And I think this is about people not understanding what they're hiring. Right. I mean, that product is the translation layer to engineering, and that's all you do. Your sole purpose is to make the engineers build software. Like, that's not product management.
No.
And I've had one terrible review in my life. One, usually it's like, knows the customer, like, understands the problem, thinks about the big picture. And to the same thing, like, you're a terrible collaborator, I like it's so surprising that
Wounding.
in this
Yeah.
day and age with this breadth of information, the companies don't understand what they're purchasing.
Right. Right. Well, I
So
mean,
how, oh, go
yeah.
ahead, Lee.
I mean, I was just gonna say, like, even very similar. And I'm not trying to bag on Expedia, but even between Marilyn and I, they hired me as a director of strategy. She was hired into the product team in the same org, and within 60 days, I was like, "You don't need me because you have her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she does strategy. She doesn't need me to build her a strategy. That's ridiculous, right?"
I
And
had the
so
same
I'm with her,
conversation in
like,
reverse. I was like, one of us isn't needed. You should repurpose us because,
well, that's why I was like, find me something else to do, right?
right?
Because she doesn't. I can follow her around, but that's not really useful,
Yeah.
right, for
I
her.
just
It's
follow
fun,
you.
but yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
how did you
I just
how did
chose to
you
hug.
tackle
Chose to hug the strategy person, which is what you guys probably did, which is like, let's just be thick as thieves because,
that?
and that person recognized it as well. And we're friends to this day because it was like, like there aren't two strategies. There's not a product strategy and a
Yeah,
organization strategy. And the org, and I now have seen enough, especially moving on to other companies, that it wasn't like Expedia was the anomaly here. So it's
yeah.
not,
No,
I'm not
no,
bagging on
no,
Expedia
no, no,
either.
no,
And my
exactly.
number one takeaway of the whole thing was, what could I have done better? I
Yeah,
should have gone in and done product 101. Like
Yeah,
I just came in assuming it looked like every environment I'd ever been in, where
yeah,
the product leader, like at some places was almost like a prima donna. And that's not what I was wanted, but that it
yeah,
was at least understood that like, hey, this person, gets to hear all the problems and gets to help, form
right.
strategy. So I just assumed good. I assumed everyone knew. So then I started, I did things like I did a reorg early on about after 90 days. And I was just trying to get my house in order because I feel like my number one job as a product leader is to create the best house for creatives to work in,
Yep.
yes,
where I would want to go and play. Like that's my job, and it's not about other people. And I announced my reorg, and I made two people in a sister organization cry and go into their leader's office. And these were amazing people because they felt I had defined one of the roles in my org as a replacement for her.
oh,
But I
nice.
just said this is an example. I didn't even know there was overlap with her.
No,
And I sent out my reorg mail for everyone to review it, and no one flagged like, hey, so and so in my org is gonna want to know why she's not in your org or why this isn't a duplicate of hers. No one said it to me. And I
yeah.
caused two people to cry. I caused arguments, and I was like, I
Hmm.
literally was just cleaning up my house, which I thought was a mess. I didn't it was
Yeah.
nothing about you guys. Like later on we can talk about an overall reorg, but and
Right.
it's just it was
Right.
one thing after the other, and it was some of the most tiring, stressful work I've ever done in the first 90 days.
Yeah.
When I got this great book sent to me by the Expedia execs, maybe you got it the first 90 days.
Yes.
Did they send you the book? I love that book. And it was like, make sure, don't come in guns a blazing, like sit back and listen. Try to find a colleague that you can help with, show your skills by helping them with one of their problems first before you start making. And I'm doing all that. I'm like, and I am just getting lambasted for, I'd leave a meeting and folks, I would, you have that spidey sense, in a meeting where you're like, I lost that person around minute 49. Like I could
Yeah.
just tell they kind of would like rolled their eyes. So you stay back after the meeting and you're like, hey, like,
What's
I
going
don't
on?
think, I think I said something crazy about, and
Right.
about 10 minutes left in the meeting. What was it? And folks would be like, oh, no, you killed it. That was great. And then that same person would escalate
Yep.
an hour later to my manager and be like, when Jay comes to a meeting, it's his way or the highway. And I'm like, I can't win here. Like, I'm just going to go. Like, I see
Yeah.
so many opportunities where I can help, but like, you brought me in to disrupt and I'm doing it. And it doesn't feel good to me. And I know it's not feeling good to my
Right.
colleagues. So why don't I just go?
So would you, when you said like, okay, that's an opportunity for me to think about what I would do differently. Is there something that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I totally would have spent time under like but doing it in a way where it's like, let me understand your role deeply. Like, can I
Mm-hmm.
shadow like so it doesn't feel like let me come in and tell you what product is, right? It was just, but do it in a reciprocal way where it's like at the same time, can we just assume none of us we just all got here yesterday and we have to explain each other's roles and departments to each other and
Yeah.
put any preconceived notions aside. So I could have created a more fertile environment for my folks to play, because I got my folks so spun up on like, oh my God, this guy talks differently. We haven't had someone who starts with the customer first, and all these things. And they got so spun up and so excited that they would run through brick walls for me, but for the new mission, because they felt like order takers. I just changed the culture within my group, but I didn't have as much respect for change management. That sounded like a very stuffy HR term to me, but like there's pieces of it. There's still some aspects of it that I think can be overkill, but there's pieces of it as like, I got to own this. I was an new executive. This was a place where I learned how to be an exec. So I made a lot of mistakes myself, but I really should have just said like, does everyone like, like forget that you hired me. Like, do you know why you hired me? Like, can I show you some of my previous work that we didn't get to in the interviews? Just so like, and let's be honest, like if anything sets off, but I didn't even know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I was going to set off all these tripwires. But I paid for it. And it took, luckily I had a leader who was just like behind me, pushing me. And he was just like, go, disrupt. Like, I'll let you know if you ever go too far. And even across the company, I was just like, how many tough escalations can you handle from a president across the company if I have to say no to something? Because my organization, just like your organization, Expedia, we were a shared service to the company. We were a $500 million cost center, customer service. Because what folks might not know is with all the brands that Expedia bought over the years, all the consumer, direct to consumer brands like Travelocity, hotels, Expedia, et cetera, plus vacation rentals, plus they had a little known, which was their most successful business, B2B offering, where they would relicense the inventory for hotels and flights, et cetera, to third parties. So Chase had their rewards program based on top of Expedia. So what part of the services we offered as a company and our organization offered was, we'll answer the travel customer service phones as Chase for you, Chase, because travel is a very complicated customer service scenario. And we can do that for you because you know how to handle credit cards. You don't know how to handle travel. So we had to be a chameleon behind the scenes and be like, our tools needed to know, oh, this call is coming in for Chase. So the right tool need to pop on the desktop. So it was a very complicated space. And I feel like I could have done a way better job of, just mapping out the world. And then, some things you're just going to walk into and you deal with on the fly. But I just like, I'm not a drinker, and I was ready to drink. Like, honestly, like my first 3 months were so exciting when I talked to my team, so painful when I went to the SLT meeting every week, and all the emails afterwards and all the escalations. And
I think that's very, so I think there are what I will call, I don't want to call it tech native, but there are companies that grew up around technology and were founded after a certain year. And those seem to have a better feel for what, like, and I'll tell you, it's like, you can tell kind of immediately if tech is on the if it's on the L side of the P&L. Like if it's IT in the corner, you're entering a company where like, it's going to be a hard slog to actually get to a mental mindset that enables product management. But there are whole industries that are now wanting to move to these capabilities. Banking is one of them, right? These are 200-year-old companies that grew up with paper processes. There are other industries that all of us have worked in that do not understand technology. They see it as IT. And again, that language is very telling. They're now hiring product teams that are experiencing exactly what you talked about, Jay. And there needs to be a broader conversation about what you're bringing in, because I see this kind of time and time again where they'll hire in a leader or a set of leaders. It causes the disruption you just talked about, because humans are, we're all reactive. And when it's like your livelihood, right? Like people are like, oh, you're taking my job. AI is going to take my job, which we all know is, it's probably not as real of a fear as you should worry about. You now have to advise these companies on how to sort of affect change management. I understand what you would be doing differently in that moment, but like as someone who may be trapped in a situation like that, or as a leader who is experiencing that in the organization, what advice would you give either the leader or the person besides just like, you're in a shitty job, bail?
Yeah.
We do need to transform organizations to be able to work a little more optimally, because you will lose product market fit if you do not. You
Yeah.
will.
I think that's why there's there's a key opportunity for this consulting angle as well, is that plus I've been the type of technologist where I'm not in love with the technology that's under the hood. I totally understand it. I stay on top of it. But if all an organization needs is for me to build a scooter, I just want to build a scooter. I don't want to
Yeah.
always build a Ferrari. Like, I don't care about the engine under the hood.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not running around trying to bring AI everywhere. I will, when it's needed and when it can have a major impact, which it can. It's an amazing technology. I do that. So I think there's an opportunity for me. Like, if my next 10 clients are all companies that are moving from a paper process to digital, or just need help turning this corner that you're talking about, like, I'm excited by that. That Expedia role is still the most fulfilling role I've ever had, despite some of the painful PTSD I have about the early days. So my recommendation is, the number one thing a product person can do when they get there, one, I think, establish and try to educate on what product does in the most respectful way, but you can show it. So the things that were working well from the beginning was like, we're working well in terms of, how do I turn the organization from being an order taker, wherever their orders are coming from. And I use that lovingly. Like, some organizations need to be sales led from the beginning, just to help get the first 3 customers. Like, we're doing these features because this customer needs it, so we can land that deal. But everyone needs to turn that corner eventually, where you're more strategy roadmap, driven.
Yeah.
And really, it's how do you come in and if there is an order taker mentality, or if the processes are set up where the product and tech team are at the bottom of the totem pole and everything flows downward, and you can read into what I mean by everything, like that was the number one problem to attack. Because I had morale issues. Like, I talked to all the engineers and product managers, and had some creative people, and people had done some great things in their past, and they were limited to being project managers on a set of things that were demanded from other folks in the organization. And all they were leveraged for their execution skills, that they knew how to turn requirements into something, but they didn't love what they did. And that's why I came in and said, you don't need a product leader if you want to continue to run this way. Like, I'm overpaid. You're paying me, and we should probably extract about 5+ product managers from the organization, give the money back, because you just need project managers.
Yeah.
Right.
If you don't want someone to go and listen to the end user and come up with what needs to be done in concert with the stakeholder that's requesting it, then let's get project managers that have a really great skill set of managing schedules and everything else. And product managers, it's a skill we need to have, but it's not necessarily the number one thing we love to do.
Yeah.
Like, so really coming in and saying, I used to say to the group, like, you guys are running a diner and you're all short order cooks, and you're like, oh, you want a bacon and egg sandwich, you want a sausage and egg sandwich, you want pancakes, like, and it was just like this chaotic, like, just take the ticket as is and doing it. And like, I was like, I'm touchy feely, but I think we want to be running a gourmet restaurant where it's just like, oh, do you have any allergies? Oh, you don't like mushrooms? Okay, you're gonna love what I've listened to everything you've said, and you're gonna love this meal that we've been working on in the back.
Yeah.
And people thought I was crazy, especially in my org. They're like, this is decades of this, how we're looked at in the food chain in the company, and there's no way you're gonna make this change. But breaking through there and showing enough people, my colleagues on the SLT were the last to embrace it, because they were losing stuff. They went from having the ability to tell the product and tech team, I need this tool that does this with these drop downs, to I turned off the intake. We had an intake form. You can go to a website, you could type in what you want, like an IT ticket, and then it was expected to get done. And I'm like, we have hundreds of tickets that we've never gotten to. You're complaining you've been waiting for something for 5 years. And unfortunately, I'm going to tell you, if it's up to me, we're never going to do the thing you asked, because it's not on strategy, and you're ready to kill me because I'm saying no to something. I was just like, but I got enough people that saw the benefit of like, I said, I turn off the intake form. If you want something, you have to talk to a product manager, and then they have to present it at an intake meeting to me. And I normally wasn't that process oriented for product planning, but I had to do it for that organization. And as soon as I raised the bar that, okay, I have to be one of the approvers, and then the SLT have to approve it, the requests coming in were higher quality, because they couldn't just slip it in because they had a favorite product manager who would make it happen. So the number one thing is try to, there's always an order taker mentality in each of these organizations that are struggling with what is true product. And I think you go for that, and you try to double click and pick at that, and try to solve that in a way where hopefully the majority of folks, including the leaders, see value. And then you can say, you should see what my organization and I can do with a bigger funnel of problems brought our way. But this is what we did. We turned around, I got rid of the POS system. You can't send tickets to the kitchen. And now look at some of the dishes that came out of the kitchen. Now we have more customer self-service. They don't have to call an agent. Like, that's because we said no. And, and I would go to brand leaders in the company that they were the main generators of requests to GCO, to the customer service org. And I just said, product leader to product leader, like, look, like, they're like, we're so glad you're here. They've needed product leader for a while. And I was like, I foresee saying no to you a lot in the next 3 to 9 months. What's that going to do? And they're like, we've been waiting for you guys to say no. Like, I was like, well, back at the organization, they're scared of, saying no to you guys. And you're like, no, just, that's product management. Say no to stuff, because you then tell us the stuff you're going to say yes to. And we know you'll blow us away by, like, you can raise more boats if you let us do this. If we just keep doing this, you're just going to get like point solutions. So sorry, that was a ramble, but
it was awesome. And I'm gonna I know, Leah, that I'm not supposed to ask you questions, but I'm about to ask you a question.
Okay.
Because I feel like you have experienced the exact same thing, except for you're telling founders no, you're telling boards no, but it's that same misunderstanding of product.
Yeah.
And what would you do differently? Because I know that you've sort of had that same arc with founders.
With a couple of great founders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, because as you were talking, I was thinking, I think one of the best things you can do as a product leader, certainly if you're going into a startup, is say what you said at the beginning, Jay, like, I'm not sure I'm what you need. You need to decide. So what happens a lot, and what's happened to me a lot, and what I see happen to others in kind of what I've done in the startup world, is founders want the shiny thing that product managers can do. Mm-hmm. And they want to be like those guys. They want to be digital. They want to be whatever they want. They're like, I want to be like that. And but then when you bring it in and start having the conversation, and they realize that I'm going to tell them they're part of the problem, then suddenly I'm not shiny, I'm not interesting, I'm a pain in the ass, I'm all these things, right? And I'm like, well, who do you want to be? When you decide who you want to be, we can have a conversation about whether you need me or some project managers, right? Because I'm not for everyone, right? Like, it's not, what I do isn't for every company, right? But if you want me, I am going to disrupt things. I am going to push for everyone to have a product mindset. I am going to talk about strategy everywhere in the company. I am going to ask questions everywhere, right? But that's because you're saying you want to be like that guy. You want to have a company like, we want to be like Amazon. We want to be like Microsoft. We want to be like, no, you don't. if what you want me to do is sit in my chair, go back and sit in my chair and be in my chair, then that's not what you want. And so I think those conversations are hard, but they're so important. And I think it is a testimony to our bravery as product people when we say, I'm not convinced you need me. So let's have that conversation. Like, you shouldn't pay me this much if you don't really want me to do what I'm good at. Right? I mean, I had that conversation at Expedia. Why are you paying me? What are you paying me to do? Right? Because you have Maryland. You don't need to pay me for this. You have Maryland, right? But I think that's to your point, Marilyn, I think there is a conversation. For me, some of the things I would have done differently, and I learned this along the way. Like, there is this concept of first team, second team, right? The first team is the team you're on. It's the team you are a part of. Often we as leaders, and especially in product, we view our first team as the team we're leading.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? This if you're a product manager, it's this set of engineers and these designers. This is my first team. If you're a product head of products, you're thinking it's the product managers that you lead them.
Mm-hmm.
But your first team is the team you're on, and you have to win their hearts and minds. You have to convince them. And if that isn't a startup and it's you and the rest of the C-suite, you've got to get that CEO and the CMO and the CFO and all these people, you've got to win their hearts and minds. I can win my team's hearts and minds all day long because they're product managers and engineers and designers and they love what we do.
Yeah.
Right. But I need to win the hearts and minds of the people that are my peers. And that takes a different set of humility and listening skills. And, you need to come in ready to say, I want to know you and you need to know me so we can decide if this is what we want to do together.
And I do think, but yes. But I do think if you go back to Jay's lived experience and Leah, clearly your and my lived experience, when someone doesn't understand the role or the value it brings, when you enter into a space and probably for the first, I don't know, year, you are misunderstood and you're seen as a jerk, someone that doesn't listen, someone like that, because you ask a question or because you want to know stuff outside of your seat,
right,
as the translator of shit to engineers that will do exactly what they're told to do. You're perceived as a terrible person, and I do think that actually wears on your soul. And I wonder because listen, you guys are both very strong, talented people. There's a lot of people that want to be you guys, right? They want to be the product leader that comes in and changes an industry, but it is freaking exhausting. So what advice would both of you give to someone that wants to be you walking into a space that's gonna hurt for a long time? Because sometimes it feels like it's not worth it, right?
Yeah. Jay, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would just say, breathe through it, right? Like you just you have have confidence in the process, the discipline, the approach. Have some hubris about yourself as well, because you need that. It can be a soul crushing time, like, so you need that a little bit, being like, no, I've made all the mistakes in my career. I continue to grow, so I'm far from perfect, but my intuition here is right. So, but play the long game. So, do I regret going back to the leader and saying, hey, dude, I'm the fish out of water, let me leave? I don't, because I think I needed to know early on that he was like, no, I got you. Like, you're I will let you know if you do something that I don't approve of, but like, keep going, keep disrupting. So I needed to know that. And then I just took a breath. And then I think I had a 6-month stretch where it was like, all right, I'm just going to go. And I wasn't feeling that. And then had another kind of setback, but I think it's really just breathe through it, take a medium to long-term view. Like, change doesn't happen overnight. Embrace the principles of change management and the spirit of it, without maybe all of the process. If you're in a larger company and they want to have 57 meetings just to roll out the change, it's just but really just, take the long view and, believe in the outcomes. And you're going to get some things wrong, but it's also, I needed to understand from the leader, how much room for experimentation do I have here? Like, there's one thing for you to say, I got you, go. But does my team and I need to stick every landing? Like, we're not going to. Like, I'm going to make one of my hunches is going to be wrong. One of their, they're going to have an execution challenge. There's going to be miscommunication between me and my group. Like I need to know that I don't need to be perfect now. You've said, oh, you've given me guardrails. I got you. I'm giving you air cover, but I need you behind me the first time we fail, and just be like, hey, we tried that didn't work. Like, let's get behind Jay's team again, and for the next one. So yeah, I think long view is the best thing I can say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what comes to my mind is two things. You need to have, and this is true, I'm telling you, I coach people all day long. You have to have people, your people. And when you're walking into a new company, know who your people are outside of all of that you can lean on and say, I'm in the shit and I need someone to talk to about it. right? You have to still have your circle of friends and people and colleagues, and people often who have worked with you are great for that. I mean, Marilyn has been that for me in the past, and I think I do that for her, where she can call me and be like, I'm in a bit of shit. Can we talk about it? Right. And I understand her and the way she works. And so there is this support structure that sits outside of the pot of stew you're in being boiled in today. You do have to have somewhat thick skin to do what we do, right? You product managers that don't have thick skin should do something else.
Yeah.
Like, it is not a job for the faint of heart. Like, it is just not. I tell product managers all the time, you are going to get your feelings hurt. People are going to accuse you of things that are not true in your core. And you have to be able to go, oh, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
Like, you have to say, like, that's a misunderstanding. We can have another conversation, but I am not who you just described me as. Right. So that's key. And then I think what has saved me time and time again across my entire career is the ability to bring lightness to the conversation. Can you do it with a bit of humor? Can you do it with a little self-deprecation? Can you do it in a way that says, listen, I know I sound like a know-it-all, but, right, could I ask one more know-it-all question?
Right. Yeah.
And having that ability to be light, and I tell clients this a lot when I'm coaching, executives and new leaders, I'll say, you can say almost anything if you can swing it with a little bit of humor and a bit of lightness. People will take almost anything you say if you're like, so I was thinking, right? And there's a little angle there. And I've done that so much in my career that I can land some pretty hard truths. And people are like, can't tell if we're supposed to laugh or cry, right? I'm not sure what the reaction is supposed to be here. And for me, that has saved me time and time again when you're in that long stretch, right? Where you're just like, this hurts. How much fun and humor and a little bit of lightness can you bring? Because again, most of what we're all doing is not going to kill people, right?
Yeah.
So how much lightness can you bring? And sometimes, and, and then how can you make sure that you have a support structure around you that keeps you from just wearing down to the bone?
I love both of those tips. I think that the other piece of advice I would give to anybody listening is you need to find your source of joy. So Jay, you talked a little bit about, your team being super happy. Leah, I know you've experienced that. One of my favorite parts of leadership are building these like super productive, happy teams where joy can happen. Like, listen, work is serious, but you can have fun while you do serious work.
Right.
And so recognizing the goodness that you build, and almost soaking yourself in that pool of support is restorative to me. But yes to everything both of you guys said, like long game, get your support system in line. Like this is a rough job. There's a reason not everybody wants to do this job.
It's also part of the reason why it's so misunderstood.
Yeah.
Right. It's a difficult job. It's this weird, like, I got to do all of this and all of this and all of this and all these different pieces. It's part of the reason it's misunderstood. So as hard as it is for us as individuals, when we have product management jobs, whether that's on a team or as a leader, I think if we can look at that and say, man, this job's hard. Oh, no wonder people don't understand it.
Yeah.
It's a great way to put it.
Of course they don't. They don't do it.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I think the key, just mixing everything you guys said together and humor, like to me, it's not a good day if I haven't made someone laugh or someone hasn't made me laugh. And self-deprecation or being vulnerable is, it's in my toolbox. I've had people say, be careful about using it too much as an exec. And I'm like, no, I can only be one way. And, you get deep connections from people within your org and hopefully outside of your org where, like they'll surprise you with a present and you didn't even like know that you had that kind of impact on them or like I got a go big or go home hat someone gave me one time because they're like, you say this all the time and you live this every day. Like, just I love the way you described it, Marilyn, of like sitting in that restorative pool, because I would literally call an offsite with my team and like the worst moment where they were feeling beat up, we'd have a lot of fun. And then I would go to an SLT meeting and it was just like, I had to manage those those mood changes and everything else. But it gave me the energy to then go to that meeting and be like, hey, how can I help here? Because like you said earlier, I think there's a great book, like the five dysfunctions of a team or something like that, where like your first team is really the team of your colleagues that you're on. As fun it is as it is, and you want to think it's the team that you spend the most time with, like you really should be spending equal or more time with your first team. And like, how could I help you, person outside of my discipline? But yeah, you need that restorative energy. And the person, you know, getting someone on the outside. I randomly found someone I'd worked with at Microsoft. We reconnected. I found out he was running product inside customer service at Airbnb. And I was like, oh my God, we have to have lunch. Right. And it was literally like, we were like doppelgangers talking about the challenges we were having and the, you know, where customer service stood in the food chain for the overall company. So I couldn't agree more with what you guys said.
Yeah. So one of the questions we like to ask when we're sort of wrapping up is, what are you excited about right now, Jay?
Right now, for me, I'm really early on in this consulting world. I had folks telling me for years to do it. The idea of consulting, I always had this classic, like, you worked for Accenture back in the day and you left on a plane on a Sunday night and you came back on a Thursday and travel. And like, and it just never sounded interesting to me. And also I had this snobbery around, like, how could I possibly go from being a craftsman product leader where I'm responsible for, you know, my team and I are responsible for our products. How could I possibly go and find passion? Because I'm a passion first person. Like, you know, I will run into things that I shouldn't run into because of passion. And it was just like, how could I possibly get energized every day if it's not our thing? Right. And I had a friend come to me and just say, look, like, you seem burnt out on the corporate stuff. I started my own consulting company with a few others 8 years ago. And he's like, I'll tell you, especially post pandemic, where remote is more, you know, is more accepted, obviously. So a lot less on the travel side, maybe zero travel with some clients. And, you know, he's like, I know you have wisdom from your 25 years that you will get energized by helping someone else with a piece of it and going and recalling and saying, oh, this reminds me of the thing I did here. He's like, you're not going to lose that passion. And he said, it will be restorative and you'll love the variety of clients. Like, every day will be a different business or industry you're talking about. So he said, like, if you want to try it, I'll throw a project your way, a couple projects. And I literally, I created an LLC on a Monday. By Thursday, because we were having some conversations, I was in a full-time contract with one of his clients. Nice. That, you know, he just went to them and said, we're known for dev and architecture consulting. Do you need any product help? And they're like, oh, glad you asked. And so I'm early on. I've been on that contract for 16 months. I've had some other clients I've done on the side, but I'm really early on. So I'm super excited about, you know, just continuing to varying the industries, the businesses, the types of leaders I work with, analog products versus digital products. I've got a doctor that wants me to help bring their teas online. They have some, you know, restorative and medicinal teas. Oh, cool. So like, I've got to learn the e-commerce world. I've got to learn the, you know, the where I'm not the creator of the product or helping someone create the product per se. So yeah, I'm just really excited about, you know, continuing to grow that business and getting exposure to so many clients.
That sounds like fun. I one of my throwaway phrases is, it's like we don't make dog food without technology. We don't exist. But in your case, you're making something physical, which is going to be super fun.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe you'll make some dog food.
Yeah, maybe.
Restorative dog.
My dog is right here on the couch.
Right.
Exactly. A little Yorkie food.
Yeah, cute. Well, Jay, thanks for coming and talking to us. It was really fun to just kind of talk shop a bit about how this all works. I hope it was fun for you.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome.